This call so that we can put it out and put it onto the website. Welcome, everyone. I have to say, this is second up to the most amount of people we've ever had on a monthly meeting. That's really cool. We've got 25 people on the call. I guess it's because everybody wants to participate in the auction and win some good, cool gifts and stuff. But we've got a really nice agenda for tonight. I'm trying to figure out how to get this reflection out of my eyeball so I don't look like a weird monster. I'll do that. We've got a quick just board thing, some safety tips from Norm, and then we're going to take and do a shop tour, Doug's shop. For those of you who've never seen it before, it's probably one of the nicest shops that I know of. He spent a significant amount of time cleaning it, Bruce, so you're not the only one that had to spend hours cleaning their shop. We are going to do that. And then following up based on what we had last week in the shop tour, or last month rather, sorry, Bill has agreed to take and go further with the information regarding treatment and drying, the kiln, the chemicals that we're using for preserved wood and stuff like that. So we're going to do that too. And I'm going to take and mute everybody. Yes, sorry. And then be able to take that. And then at the end of the meeting, we will take and do the slide presentation of the Christmas ornaments. I have a lot of pictures to show you. I'm going to take and bring up something that I have here so that we can do this too. And I'll show you guys real quick. So we're going to do the auction goodies like we did last time. We're going to take and let me get back into the meeting here. I'm going to share my screen. Share my screen. Share my screen. Hopefully you guys can all see my screen. We have the auction goodies that, let me get some of this stuff out so you guys can actually see. We have the slideshow. Start current slide. We have basically a collection of pen making materials and some odds and end gift things. As you can see, 6 comfort PSI comfort kits, a comfort bushing to be able to turn the comfort pens. We have 3 PSI kaleidoscope kits, which are actually a little kaleidoscope that you can build into an egg. So it's kind of a challenging. And then there are 3 gold holders for the eggs, so you can actually put the kaleidoscope on the eggs. There's a dozen pen blanks of various colors and textures. There's 4 bottle stopper containers, which are these plastic guys for display cases. And then there's a bunch of leather and velour, crushed velour pen boxes. So we're going to take and start the bidding. I think I had said $15 was the start for anybody that wants to do it. We're going to do it the same way we did last month. And all you have to do is put a bid in the chat window. The chat window, if you don't know where it is, should be on your menu for Zoom. Typically mine is at the bottom and most people have it at the bottom. You can click chat and it'll bring up a chat window and you can take and, you know what, I should actually do this. I'll share my screen so you can see me doing this. So if you see the bottom of the screen on my screen, I have a chat capability somewheres.
We're still looking at the picture of the demo of the giveaway stuff.
Okay, hang on. New share. So I'm going to take this off. And I'm going to show you not this.
The bidding has begun.
I'm going to go back to, damn, stop sharing. Okay, stop sharing. Now I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Sorry, guys. I'm learning this just like everybody else is at times. You should be able to see on the bottom of your screen a control panel that looks like this that I'm running through. And one of the windows that you should see is chat. Mine looks different because I've got all of the controls to be able to run the session. But you should have a chat window in there. And if you take that, you'll be able to put a bid in to the chat window for the pricing. I see we've got 2 bids in there already. Cool beans. Charlie and Anthony, thanks very much. we'll continue through. We're going to run this through pretty much through the entire meeting, and then everybody can bid on it. Once the bidding is done, we'll award, send the check to Doug like we did with Jody for last month, and then I will either ship the items to you or we can arrange for someplace to do the pickup. So that's where we're at with that. I need to be able to find Norm. I sent out a lot of different things for what happened at the board meeting. That we had the board meeting the other day. Did anybody have any questions or anything that was done from the board meeting of what we actually had for the board? Questions in the emails that I sent? Was there any questions that anybody had regarding any of the issues that were there that were covered? If you do, unmute yourself because everybody's muted. Sorry. Questions? Nobody? I'll give you a time for unmute and I'll comment on one. We are working diligently to put together the parking lot meetings. Norm and Bill Stewart have both agreed to assist with that. We have to reach out to the new pastor at the church, Jim. He has been very, very gracious in telling us that he'd welcome to us to do that. So all we're trying to do now is figure out a time and day that'll work for everybody so that we can actually do that. It'll basically, the concept will be socially distanced parking lot meeting where whoever wants to come can actually come and sit down and chat for a while and kind of, be able to spend some time chatting. So we're working on that. And other than that, that's all I had for the executive stuff. So I'm going to take and move this over to Norm, and I'm going to make Norm the spotlight video. There we go. Go for it, Norm. Safety tips.
Wow, okay. Safety tips this week. A couple things we haven't touched on before or recently. First of all, safe lathe speeds. There is a formula for that, which most of us do know, I hope. It is the size or the diameter of the piece times the proposed RPM should fit in the range of 6,000 to 9,000. An easy way to do that is take 6,000 and divide that by the size of the piece. If it's an 8-inch piece you're working on, that'll come out to 750 RPM. Divide 9,000 by the same 8 inches, and it comes out to 1125, which means the safe speed is somewhere between 750 and 1125. Now that's going to depend on the shape of the piece. It's going to depend on your comfort level with it, but that's how you determine the proper speed to work at. When you do that, as it becomes more symmetrical, you can build up your speed a little bit, but it should be between 6 and 9. But again, the same formula applies. Now, that's something most of us learn when we first start. Other things that we haven't spoken of, though, are also tools. Now, everyone knows, again, you don't want to try to cut with the dull tool. It means if you do that, you're going to have to force it, and that gets more and more dangerous. However, how far away should the piece be from the tool rest? We all hear it should be as close as possible, but there are rules of thumb in terms of each individual tool, how much that reach should be past the tool rest. For instance, a 3/4 inch bowl gouge that really should not extend any more than 3.5 inches past the tool rest. A 3/8 inch bowl gouge, 1.5 inches. This is predicated on the size of the tool and safe turning. For a spindle gouge, you're talking a 1/4 inch should reach only about 3/4 inch max, and for a 1/2 inch would be 1 3/4. And couple that with the fact that a good tool handle should be at least 5 times the maximum distance you intend to reach beyond the tool rest. That is predicated on making sure you have the needed leverage to properly control the tool. For a maximum reach of 3 inches over the tool rest, your handle should be at least 15 inches in length. Pardon me. These are just some things I culled from the, let's see, what is this? This is Woodturners catalog. If any of you have that, page 2 has a very good synopsis on wood turning safety. And next month I'll try to go on some of the other things. But it's certainly not everything, but it does give a good synopsis of things we should look for when we're trying to make sure that we optimize our safety. That's it from me, Kevin. It's up to you now.
Sounds great. Thanks, Norm. So, hands up for safety. I mean, can't talk about safety enough, not only with everybody being super careful with the breathing air these days. The definitely consequences for working on the tools and the lathe. Safety becomes a real issue. So, any questions for Norm on that? Doug, otherwise I'm going to flip it over to you. Any questions?
I got one question.
Go.
Talking about the speed of the piece spinning around, does the size and weight of the lathe have much to do with it?
Well, according to the formula, not so much. However, you're not going to want to turn something which is too large for the lathe, which is going to cause the motor to strain, and which is going to be unbalanced and cause the lathe to jump around. We've all heard tales of the lathe trying to walk across the room. That's why a lot of people put bags of cement and so forth underneath. That's common sense. You've got to make sure that any of these things that you're turning, it's not going to be something which looks and seems like it might be risky. If you're going to be doing anything which you're not sure of, start out at the slowest speed possible. At the 6,000, use the 6,000 number in the formula, and if it goes well, then you can increase it a little bit, but always err on the side of caution.
And I'm going to add
a question.
Hold on one sec, Joe. I'm going to add one piece to that, Ray. Something that everybody always forgets. Where's the power switch on your lathe? The last thing you want is a lathe that's out of balance and starting to dance, and you can't get to the power switch easily. So I don't know, but a technique that was taught to me the first time I was turning is when you're starting a piece that is large like that, where you don't know, you're starting it slow. But one of the things you always want to do is stand to the left or the right of the lathes. So if the piece does get tossed, you can get to it. And which should you be, on the left or the right? Well, wherever the power switch is, that's the side you should be on. Because if you have to reach across the dancing piece to get to the power switch, not good, because you're going to probably have a cast on your arm very shortly. So yeah, that's a one with that type of thing. And speaking from past experience, I threw a log off of my Nova one day, and I had started it really slow. It ended up on the floor, no hazard or damage to anything, but it was simply because I had started it slow and I was able to power down the lathe quick enough. So, but that's that one. Go ahead, Jody. Sorry.
Well, it's another speed question. Is there speed concerns about turning slow? Like, I turn really slow. I turn ridiculously slow. And I just wonder sometimes if I'm doing myself a disservice by not turning it up. So I was just curious if there's issues with that.
How confident do you feel? How safe do you feel? If you don't feel
At the
safe,
speed I'm turning, I feel perfectly safe. When I turn that thing up, I start to freak out a little bit. So I usually turn probably well under where I should be.
So
Kevin, I'll leave this one for you.
Yeah, one thing you're going to find with slower speeds, the density of the wood makes a difference. Because if you're turning at a slow speed, the potential that your tool is going to dig into a soft spot because it has more time to be on the soft spot is a little bit higher. Where if it's going over a harder spot, it'll tend to stay. So the only thing I've found with really, really slow speeds, especially with punkier wood, if the wood is a different density, then sometimes the slow speed is actually a little bit more because it seems like it gets more grabby because the tool has a a slightly longer chance to be able to sink into the soft wood versus the hardwood, where it'll slide over it. So and sometimes increasing the speed, even though it's a little scarier, sometimes increasing the speed will actually provide you a slightly safer turning, level than a really slow will, because you don't get the glide on the wood. If you're riding the bevel right, if you ride the bevel well enough, then you should be okay. But slow speed can be a little bit of a hazard, but more so is the high speed. Make sure your stuff is chucked in really good for the high speeds. For the lower speed, you got to be a little bit more wary of how the back end of the tool is handling the wood.
Actually makes a lot of sense for some of the issues that I've been having, that I probably just need to turn it up, because
George, you stop laughing at that.
definitely experiencing a little grippiness that I get stuck.
You'll find that the chisel wants to bounce, and typically that bounce will go away if you increase the speed a little bit. But that also says you got to be riding the bevel so that you're getting that kind of slide off the thing, and it's not sinking into the wood.
Well, that just makes a lot of sense now. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah, no sweat.
Some time ago, I was speaking to Barry Gross about this subject, and he used an example from his one of his demos, that he went to visit a club in Texas, and they put about a 5-pound piece of oak on a lathe, left it turned up all the way, and as soon as they started, it threw the piece off the lathe out the window and dented a car in the parking lot.
Not good.
The potential for injury is great if you don't pay attention to what you're doing.
That's for sure. Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, we're going to switch to Doug.
Okay, can I add something?
Sure.
Okay, we're talking about the safety switch, turn it off. Like, I got the same lathe we have in the club.
Okay.
Then I put a paddle switch on the other side, so I can turn on either side of my turning. And another thing with the paddle switch, on the right-hand side, if I'm turning and whatever I'm turning starts getting loose, all I have to do is push my hip into the paddle switch, and it shuts the lathe down. So that's something we can anybody can add to their lathe.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion.
I bought the paddle switch, I think, from Grizzly. It's so if anybody's interested in doing it, let me know. I'll show them how to do it.
Cool, that'd be great. Thanks. Yeah, paddle switches, I've got one on my table saw. Same thing, I can whack it with my knee to shut the saw off. So made it out of a piece of plywood. Anybody else? Okay, Doug, which one of these, you're only on one right now, right? So I'm going to spotlight you on this one, right? You're still muted. Hold on. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, except that we're echoing off of the other device. Hold on. You have the phone on going as well? Yes. Okay, so I'm going to mute this one. Okay, Doug, talk. Let's see if you're echoing now.
Okay.
Yep.
Are you echoing?
I think we're good. Everybody? Okay, we are now entering Doug's shop. You're on, Doug. Go for it.
Okay. My workshop was on top of my garage. It used to be in the garage, and 8 years ago, I made my wife a deal that if she could get her garage back, I could build this workshop. Well, later, as you see in the tours, now I have a 2-floor workshop, but that's the story for another day. These are the stairs coming up. I have got wood storage and other kinds of storage up above the stairwell and kind of going around the shop. Just as Bruce said in his tour, he never can have enough clamps. I have a shaper, which for about the last 10 years has probably been no more than a paperweight or taking up space because I don't really use it much anymore. I generally just use the router built into the table saw. I have a 6-inch joiner, a belt sander. I don't really use the disc too much. Sometimes I use it for like doing rings and segmented turning. This is my bandsaw. I recently invested in the AccuSlice Slice and AccuWedge system. The jury is still out as to whether or not that was a good investment or not. I got it for doing my birdhouses and doing the wedged bottoms for the birdhouses because I was getting bad results on the table saw. But I was getting equally bad results on the AccuWedge system. The setup was a little bit fussy, and I had to change saw blades and do some other things. But they were pretty helpful and actually, giving me some guidance to make the things a little bit better. I have two lathe stations. I have the Powermatic lathe, the bigger lathe, and I have kind of the tools that I generally use with the Powermatic. Over here in the corner, I've got a case that I built for keeping track of my sandpaper. I used to keep it in a box and never could find the right ones. So I built this, and then each grit basically has its own little slot. And then I also, this didn't quite, oops, are you still there?
Yeah.
This didn't work out quite like I wanted to, but the discs all attach. I originally wanted to have them with the handles, but that's got to be redesigned at some point. With lathe joists, I generally use the Powermatic for anything that's big or long, but generally speaking, I prefer the my Delta MIDI lathe for other types of turning. And this is my MIDI lathe. And again, I have the tools pretty much organized by what seems to go with which lathe. I have this little Featherlight chuck, which I use for a lot of ornaments and small things, which I really like. This is my drill press. I custom made that table that I can actually put stops on here or move this in and out to kind of use as a gauge. This is my sharpening station. I just recently built this cabinet. I originally was kind of a flat worker, and I've only been doing turnings for about 6 or 8 years or so. So part of my passion really is to do cabinet work. Now this I stole this idea from Pete Ladotti. He brought this in at one point. I made up these little guides that help me align. So if I'm doing an Ellsworth sharpening, I can just put that guide in there, and it gives me the proper spacing for the arm. And then for chisels or for like skews and things like that, then I made up these also to do the same kind of thing. Moving down the line, this is kind of like work in progress, or some things that have finished, but kind of like my work in progress section. My chop saw. I have a disc sander here. Mortising machine. Oscillating drum sander. A Tormac sharpening system. I actually bought the tools to sharpen bowl gouges and things, but it's so much work that I don't really use it for that much anymore. And then I have a sink upstairs here. I have this work table that usually it's just a junk table, but I always wanted to build my own work table, but when I saw this from Rockler, I couldn't even buy the lumber for the price that this one cost.
Lost video, Doug.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. This is my table saw. I have this jet filtration system for getting dust out of the air. I do have a a vacuum system, but I haven't installed it here yet. That's one of my next tasks.
Hey, Doug, can I ask you a question about that filtration system?
Yes,
How often do you change the filters?
not very often.
Okay.
In fact, you can probably see that it's probably clogged right now. So it's overdue.
I asked because I got a Rikon.
I have the exact same one that Doug has, and all I do is just vacuum the filter off when I'm vacuuming my shop.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm kind of overdue for that.
Doug, what's the size of your air conditioner?
It's like a 20,000 BTUs.
Okay, thanks.
It's it doesn't quite do the job because I have an open stairwell to the garage, so it's odd. I have to put the air conditioner on in the garage at the same time this one's on to be able to get it to be cold up here. This is Kevin's favorite feature.
Yes, indeed.
I have a steel I-beam that projects 4 feet out over the driveway, and then this electric chain hoist.
I am so jealous.
Now moving downstairs.
Doug, while we're
Actually-
still upstairs, where do you do your squaring for your pen blanks?
Generally, I use the pen mills.
Oh, you use the pen mills. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never done them on the disc sander or anything. I've gotten good results with the pen mills. That's what I use.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. I've got more lumber storage above the cabinets. As I was cleaning up today, I just realized I have too much stuff and not enough place to put things. That's for sure.
Join the club.
Moving down into the garage. I actually cleaned up today, Kevin, so it looks a little better than it did this.
Oh, no, that's cheating, dude. You can't do that.
Can't do that.
Oh, look at that. You're not kidding.
Yeah. So I have a scroll saw over there on the bench, another drill press. There's a slot here for another miter saw, but that's at the other house right now. I have a radial arm saw, a grinder that I use for other things, metal lathe and milling machine. I got a 15-inch planer. I've got the 1938-inch drum sander, and I build electrical control panels as a sideline thing, and this is kind of a station where I do that. And then I have another hoist up here so I can move those things along. And then I have additional lumber storage above the garage door. Any questions?
And your wife has a little car that she can pull in the garage, right? Like a
No, not even close.
How can you manage with so little space?
jeez.
See, there hasn't been a car in this garage since Superstorm Sandy, where I felt that at that point one of the cars needed to be protected.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's really a nice shop. And for those of you who were with us when we did the day classes with
That
Doug,
was
and
Michael Keys.
Michael Keys,
Yes.
that was the name we were looking for.
You were trying to remember that before.
Yep.
This is a blueprint of what this house looked like in 1939 when it was built. It was only 480 square feet, and now it's 2,300. So it's quite a transition.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. Any questions at all for Doug on what he's shown?
Just envious, that's all.
One thing I wanted to make note of as we were walking in, as Doug was walking in just now, he walked past a fire extinguisher. And on the safety issue, that is a must for every workshop. And as a matter of fact, I was thinking about that earlier this week, that when we do start going to events again, I think the club should invest in a fire extinguisher as part of our safety equipment.
Not a bad idea, Norm. Yeah, I've got about 4 of them in my shop. Same thing. That goes along with talking about fire extinguisher. That also goes along with metal cans for any combustible finishes. So
Right.
yeah, it's really nice, Doug.
Thank you.
Very good, Doug. Very nice, Doug.
Doug, I hate you.
It's gorgeous.
Beautiful.
It is beautiful.
It's even cleaner
Very
than
good.
it was the day with Michael Keyes.
Well, when I built this, my wife said it was too nice for a workshop, and she immediately scheduled a party before I could move in the tools in. She put tables in here and invited half the neighborhood.
Yeah, it's worth it, right? So,
Yes.
okay, I'm going to cancel the spotlight video. Doug, thank you so much for doing that. And remember, we have the chat still going with the auction items. So don't forget, we've got those. And if not, we can take, I'm going to switch over. Bill, are you ready? Okay, we got to unmute you.
I'm unmuted.
And you should be in the spotlight. Everybody should see just Bill.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much. I'm going to go to share my screen here. So first I just got to turn one device on. There we go. And then I'm going to go and share my screen and go to a PowerPoint that you hopefully now will see. Let me just bring that up and go to slideshow view. And some of you have seen part of this presentation before. I did a presentation on drying wood and building a bowl kiln back in November of 2019. So I've reworked some of that stuff. I've expanded it. And hopefully it's some useful information for you. But what we're going to talk about during our time together this evening is we're going to look at, first off, the basic anatomy of a tree and the different structures that are contained within it. We'll look at how water content in wood is measured. So if somebody says the wood has a moisture content of 72%, you know how that was derived. Also, we're going to look at 5 different methods for drying wood. I'll talk about how I built my bowl kiln and what I've used it for and how many pieces I've dried in it. We'll look at how you prepare wood for drying. You know, why do you use anchor seal and not latex paint to seal end grain on wood? I'll share with you some of the records I keep to determine progress and how you can make up some very easy charts. And then finally, we're going to talk about how do you go about repairing cracks in drying wood, since, you know, even though you can take the best care in drying, you're always bound to wind up with a crack or two. So how do you minimize that and even turn that crack into an unplanned design feature? But we're going to begin by looking at the anatomy of a tree. And this is a piece of Tom Pushker ash that I got from Tom a few weeks ago after the big storm. And really, you've got 4 structures here in this cross section. You can see towards the middle, we have heartwood. Let's just see if I can go down here and come up with a laser pointer. There we go. I got a new device here, so I'm going to play with it. Heartwood's down here. That's the darker piece. Then up here, sapwood. And then you have the cambium layer, which is that area right in here, and the inner bark right here in the outer bark. And the first point I want to make to you when we're talking about drying wood is all of these structures are different structures. They all wind up reacting differently to drying. So the first rule here is talk a little bit about safety. Whenever you're turning a log, that has bark on it, you want to, it's a must, you have to wear a full face shield because you don't know when it's going to happen that this cambium layer is going to get let loose from the sapwood. You're going to have this bark all come flying off of you in one piece. Twice so far that has happened to me, and I got hit squarely in the face shield by all of the bark that came off in one piece off of about a 12, 14-inch log. And if I didn't have a face shield on, I probably would have been significantly injured, probably would have broken my glasses, who knows, maybe broken my nose, etc. So now look how all these structures work together. the life cycle of a tree, reading from the bottom, is such that waters and minerals are transported up from the roots through the sapwood. So the sapwood, which is this lighter area out in here, delivers water and minerals up to the leaves. Photosynthesis occurs in the leaves where carbon dioxide and sun rays are used to produce soluble carbohydrates and oxygen. So we really have a symbiotic relationship with trees out there, and that they take in carbon dioxide and give off oxygen. We take in oxygen and give off carbon dioxide. So we really are both necessary to one another's survival. Oxygen is given off into the atmosphere, and about 90% of the water is given off through evaporation. Then carbohydrates in the remaining water are transported back down the inner bark in here and to produce new wood in this Cambium layer here. So the rings begin to grow in here. You have one ring per each year. And then the heartwood is darker here. So one of the things you're going to see is if you watch a piece of wood dry and you have sapwood and hardwood, the sapwood usually is somewhat softer. The sapwood usually has a higher moisture content. Therefore, you're going to wind up seeing the sapwood wind up tending to check before the rest of it. Now, water, very simply, is the lifeblood of a tree. And we say that wood is hygroscopic, which means it's like a sponge. It will gain or lose moisture based on conditions of the surrounding environment. By weight, about 40 to 45% of a tree is water. And there are two types of water that are in a tree. Free water, which is contained between the pores of the wood or in the pores of the wood. And then we have bound water, which is within the cell walls. So when a wood begins to dry, wood loses free water before losing bound water. And I think really what's going on here is free water begins to drop and is the first to go. But as the free water and free water moisture begins to drop, water begins to permeate the cell walls of the tree, so the cells now begin deflating. And the fiber saturation point is where all the free water is gone. And once wood hits its fiber saturation point and begins losing bound water, the wood will deform as tree cells deflate. That's where you see warpage occur. When all of the bound water is lost, we say that wood is oven dry. Now, when wood deforms, there's really three types of shrinkage that takes place. And I'm going to show you a diagram of this in a second. There is tangential shrinkage, where it is perpendicular to the grain and parallel to the growth rings. We have radial shrinkage, which is shrinkage occurring just purely perpendicular to the growth rings. And then you have longitudinal shrinkage, which is along the edge of the grain. Tangential shrinkage is always greater than radial shrinkage, and as a result, checks and cracking occur. Here, look at this chicken scratch diagram that I drew. We have a log here that was just drawn on a whiteboard, and you see if it shrinks tangentially, the wood is going to pull apart at some point, and where it pulls apart is checking. The radial shrinkage is less than tangential shrinkage, so it's going to create stress on the wood. Longitudinal shrinkage, is along the length of the log. So tangential shrinkage is generally about twice radial shrinkage. Longitudinal shrinkage is so small it's not even measured. A really good resource to look at is the wood database. Have any of you ever looked at that before? It's a free internet resource. You can put in a species of wood, it'll bring it up. It gives you its average tangential shrinkage, longitudinal shrinkage, gives you its wet weight, its dry weight. It's really, really good. Now, when we talk about drying wood, how fast wood dries is dependent upon relative humidity. So what relative humidity is an expression of the amount of humidity held by the air. I always had difficulty understanding relative humidity because it's relative, which is pretty stupid sounding, but as temperature rises, air has greater capacity to hold moisture. So for the same mass of air, as temperature increases, relative humidity will decrease. So as the relative humidity decreases, drying will happen faster because there's a greater differential between the moisture content of the thing that's drying and the relative humidity in the air. When you get to 100% relative humidity, the air cannot hold any moisture. So like, you know, on a fall or summer evening, when the sun goes down and temperature falls, you'll always see humidity increases. And then you see a point that you have dew beginning to fall out of the air. It can't hold any more water in the air, so it falls out, and that's what we call the dew point. It's going to be important for us to know about this when we're drying wood, to try to evenly dry wood. The greater the differential between moisture content and the wood and the humidity in the air, the faster drying occurs. So certainly, wood's going to dry faster at 80 degrees Fahrenheit, where the relatively humidity is only 1%, versus wood in 80 degrees, where the relative humidity is, let's say, 80%. So if humidity in the air is stable and the drying rate is constantly decelerating as the differential between moisture content in the wood and humidity in the air is getting smaller. Therefore, to make drying progress at a constant rate, the humidity in the air must constantly be decreasing. And what I mean by that is that if you take a bowl, a rough-turned bowl that's out of wet wood, and you just toss it on your basement floor, which is what I generally do initially, it will begin to dry because the bowl is so wet. And even though humidity in my basement is about 50%, there's a huge differential. So it begins to drop right away. But as that bowl loses moisture and becomes closer to the 50% relative humidity in the air, drying slows. So what we have to do is decrease the relative humidity. And you decrease the relative humidity by beginning to heat up the air. Okay? And that's the whole principle of a bowl kiln. Now, the way we measure moisture content in wood, and this is the American Society for Testing Materials standard D-4442. So this is like a standard that is used out there. Moisture content is expressed as the wet weight of the wood minus the oven dry weight divided by oven dry weight. So for example, if we had, let's say, a bowl, let me jump ahead one slide here, and then I'm going to go back, where the wet weight is 5 pounds and the oven dry weight is 3 pounds. Go back to our formula. You would have 5 pounds minus the oven dry weight is 3 pounds divided by the oven dry weight, 3 pounds. So 5 minus 3 is 2. So really, we come out to a fraction of 2/3, or therefore, in our example here, number 1, the moisture content is going to be 66 2/3% in that wood. It's possible to have a moisture content that exceeds 100%, because if you have, let's say, a wet weight of, I don't know what, let's say 100 minus a dry weight of, let's say, 40, you now have 60 divided by 40, that's over 100%. So don't think you're getting a wrong answer if you come out with a moisture content of over 100%. My thought on moisture content is it's a good thing to use when you're just comparing wood to another, but beyond that, I really don't use it for a lot. Now, the other thing here is for years, honest to God, for years, I just figured out this past year, using metrics or the metric system when we're talking about weighing and drying wood is so much easier than using ounces and pounds, because when you have to convert ounces and pounds back and forth and you got 1 pound 4 ounces divided by 3 pounds 2 ounces, that problem's a real pain in the neck to do. But if you just use grams, it's real easy. I really can't believe that America had passed legislation in the United States Congress to transition this country to the metric system. I don't know by what year. It was years ago. And we got about halfway there, and people started saying, Jesus, this dividing and multiplying by 10 is really hard, and they scrapped the whole thing. But the metric system, I find, is so much easier. So simply 1 ounce equals 28.35 grams, 1 pound equals 453.6 grams if you ever want to do the conversions. I do have a moisture meter, and the thing about a moisture meter positively is that it gives you an idea of the current moisture content of the wood without having to wait for the wood to be dry to determine what the moisture content was. And the moisture meter that I have, which is supposedly a good one, tends to read either 0% if something is dry. If it's a little bit moist, it reads about 7%. If it's really wet wood, I think it goes up to 30%, and that's about it. The other thing about moisture meters in terms of their accuracy, if you're going to use them, you have to take several readings. Because I'll tell you right now, you take a reading along the end grain of the wood that's not anchor sealed, you'll get a lower reading than the end grain of a wood that you have anchor seal on. Because if I have anchor seal on it, the moisture is coming all the way up to the underside of the anchor seal. If it's not anchor sealed, I'm going to lose some evaporation.
Bill, Bill, does your moisture meter correct for relative humidity?
I don't believe so.
So if you had a moisture meter, which most people who dry lumber have, they have a moisture meter that corrects for relative humidity. And most of the issues that you just talked about would go away.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Maybe I should get one. But again, I really don't use it a lot. I use it to get an idea, an approximation, of how wet or dry wood is. So, with respect to moisture meters, different readings are based on where the pins are inserted. Generally, the moisture meters that I've seen only read to a max of 30% or so, and they are not as accurate as comparing the wet weight to the dry wood, but they give you another piece of the puzzle, so it's probably worth having one. Now we're going to talk about some methods for drying wood. We can either do air drying, you can microwave dry wood. I'm going to talk about chemical drying, which would be using pentacryl, which I've been experimenting with. We'll also talk about denatured alcohol. I've never boiled wood to dry it, but I'm going to talk about how that's done from what I've read and what's behind it. And then finally, we're going to talk about a bowl kiln. Now, if you air dry wood, wood only dries at a rate of about 1 inch per year. So if you're drying a bowl that has 1/2 inch thick walls, been rough turned, you're looking at a good 6 months before it can be dry. You do need to consider variables like temperature, humidity, thickness of wood, and the beginning moisture content of the wood. The wood's going to dry most rapidly if you air dry it initially. And it's kind of like a curve that kind of goes down. So, if we looked at thinking of this chart as being a chart, our moisture content kind of decreases like this across down. So you never really get to totally dry ever, but you're always getting closer to the bottom. Let me just bring that back down to the bottom there. So a microwave oven can be used to dry, but you need a microwave with a carousel tray. You should place the wood on the outer edge of the tray. run the microwave on low to medium, which is 200 to 300 watts. Only medium, low 300 watts. Only use medium, which is 490 if you have 4 or more sections that are in the oven. Drying time is 20 to 30 minutes. After 20 minutes, weigh and then reweigh. After another minute, if you lose no weight, the piece is oven dry. You really do have to be careful with microwave drying because like I had this sassafras vase that was made out of wet wood that I said, gee, let me microwave dry it because I want to finish it. Put it in the microwave, and our kitchen is like next to our family room. My wife was watching TV in the family room, and she didn't know that I had just put a big chunk of raw wood in the microwave. And I knew if I got caught doing this, it probably wasn't going to be good. Now, what happened is the wood caught fire. That was a real problem because now I've got to worry about the 5 smoke alarms in our house going off that are interconnected with battery backup. So this is going to make enough noise to wake the dead. Pretty much my life is going to be over at this point. So I luckily was able to get it quickly into the sink. Smoke alarms didn't go off, but I learned you've got to be real careful with microwave drying or bad things can really happen. It can be a good thing if you can get it hotter, the piece hotter than, let's say, 212 degrees Fahrenheit, because what's happening at that point is all of your moisture in there is turning to steam, a gas, and being given off into the air. But again, you have to be careful of that with stuff that's moisture in your wood that's suddenly turning to steam, because here's the thing. When water goes from a liquid state water to gas steam, it expands 1,500 times. So, you know, you've all seen like a potato explode in your microwave. Well, I imagine having a vase explode would be a lot more spectacular than that. So anyway, you know, that's microwave drying. Now, one of the things I've been experimenting with is pentacryl. I'm going to share with you some of the pieces that I've worked on. So just looking some marketing materials that I got off of, I think it was Craft Supply's website, and this is written by pentacryl. It says the stuff was originally developed for treating waterlogged timber. Preservation solutions, pentacryl wood stabilizer, prevents cracking by displacing water and moisture in wood fiber. By immersing unseasoned wood in pentacryl for the recommended length of time, drying time for green wood can be reduced by 90% while eliminating cracking and splitting. Pentacryl will not discolor the wood, is not hygroscopic, and will not oxidize, decompose, or migrate in the wood when exposed to different degrees or temperature or humidity. It accepts most type of finishes and can be stained and glued. How much do I need? The average wet 6-inch by 6-inch by 2-inch mold blank absorbs about 2 ounces of pentacryl, 2 ounces of pentacryl. From what I've seen so far, the absorption rate of 2 ounces for a 2 by 6 by 6 blank is about right. Decreasing drying time by 90%, I don't see that. It does decrease drying time, that's for sure. I can't say by how much yet because I haven't done a side-by-side comparison of 2 pieces. From what I've seen so far, it really does eliminate cracking and splintering. Now, let me take you to a little experiment that I'm doing with pentacryl that's going on right now. You see there a natural edge bowl that's made out of ash. That was wet ash that came from Tom Pushker a few weeks ago. And I turned this bowl after I watched the David Ellsworth's AAW presentation. If you missed that, you missed one of the best presentations that has ever happened in the history of wood turning. Ellsworth is a phenomenal teacher, and I think it was just fantastic. I've already watched that whole thing back a whole second time taking notes on it both times. So anyway, the wood here is wet ash, and the tree had leaves on it when it came down during that big storm that we had. Now, as I turn this, the mistake that I made is the wings of the bulb should have been out a little bit more. So they should have come out like this. And I cut from the top my bowl round. So that's why I wound up with wings that are almost coming up at a 90-degree angle to a base. That's a mistake here. Because the problem that I now have is with these wings is that I almost have like a wood cookie here. In fact, let me see. I think I've got a picture of it. Yeah, next slide. End view of it, I've almost got like a wood cookie here. So what's going to happen is, given that tangential shrinkage is greater than radial shrinkage, it's going to want to shrink across here, and it has no place to go because this is straight. Now let me just go back a slide. If these wings had been out more to the side, yeah, as it pulled together, it would have pulled the wing up a little bit. So I would have avoided it, but that ain't happening here. I'm already at about 90 degrees. So what I did is I took this whole bowl and I soaked it in Pentagrill for a couple of days. And I didn't have enough to cover it. I guess the Pentagrill came up to about here or so, just filled it, overflowed it. So what I did is for half a day, I'd have it filled, then I'd flip it over so I'd have the wings. So the whole thing stayed wet for a couple of days until I took it out and it now began to dry. So one of the things that I'm concerned with in the experiment is because the bark, the cambium layer, sapwood, and heartwood tends to have different shrinkage and dry at a different rate. I'm wondering if now the bark is going to stay with the cambium layer and the sapwood, and I'm going to avoid, because of the pentacryl, the coming off of the bark that usually occurs. A lot of people will go and take thin CA and saturate the cambium layer into the bark with that, and that may hold it together, but I'd rather not do that. I'd rather see if I could get it pulled together by itself. Let me just put my thing back down to the bottom here. And so now I've got a couple of other rough turn Pentagrill pieces. This is an ash bowl on the left, and that's a side view of it on the right. This ash bowl came out of a crotch in the wood. Now you can see a small crack that's in here, and that small crack I filled with CA. What I've got to tell you though is don't blame it on the wood, blame it on the turner, because I'm at about 1/32 of an inch right here, because I almost turned through the bottom. And I expect when I go to turn this again, I'm going to go right through the bottom. So I'm going to have to figure out something to put in there, which doesn't do the piece a lot of justice, but I have nothing else to do. But as you can see, this is now oven dry. It spent 2 weeks in my kiln. And for the last week, it was in my kiln at 145 degrees at 1% humidity. So this is like drier than dry gets at this point. And I really, given that it started out totally wet, as of that storm, I don't see a lot of deforming that's happened here. And there is no cracks in it based on the one that really is kind of man-made here. Let me show you another piece. Now here I have a couple of discs that I turned, and you can see the side, again, they're out of a crotch. And the thing about crotches in woods, you can see where the trunk came up here and it split out here into 2 separate branches. You can also still see my serial number on it from my kiln, because I give them each a number and then I keep records on them in terms of drawing. I have no cracks here. This one crack here, that's part of the pith, and that was in it when it was cut wet. That's not as a result of drying. It did go in deform a little bit, kind of potato chip-like over here. That was also despite the fact that when this dried, I had a 45-pound barbell weight that I placed on top of it to like hold it down, and still got a little bit of deforming that occurred. So I think basically Pentagrill is a good thing. It could be a real good solution for me for when I'm turning a piece like a crotch or, something, like the wings on that natural edge bowl that I showed you, where it's like you're asking yourself, how can I avoid the cracking? Now, another form of chemical drying is to use denatured alcohol. One of the presentations that we shared with the North Jersey or New Jersey Woodturners this year was some gentleman that they had that turned a lot of bowls. And he said what he would do if he was rough turning a bowl that was a crotch, he would take it and he would soak it in, he had a 5-gallon bucket of denatured alcohol, and he would soak it for a couple of days or so. And what denatured alcohol does is it's so thin and it does mix with water that it permeates right through the wood cells, mixes with water, and winds up evacuating a lot of the water into the denatured alcohol. I don't know if you have a set volume, like several gallons of denatured alcohol, and you're constantly drying stuff in it, or you then kind of like bringing down the effectiveness of the DNA because you constantly are putting more and more water into it because the two don't separate, they mix together. So what they say is to soak it in DNA for at least 24 hours, let it dry for 15 to 30 minutes, wrap the outside of the bowl and rim with paper. Store the bowl upside down and allow the air to reach inside. The piece should be able to be turned in about 2 weeks or so ago. And then boiling works by taking a bowl and submerging it in boiling water for at least an hour for each 1-inch thickness of wood. And what you're doing in boiling is you're taking and you're breaking down the cell membranes, similar to cooking a vegetable. That vegetables start off nice and crispy. You boil them for a while, they get soggy. The more they boil, the soggier they get until you have a bunch of slop left. So you're doing kind of a similar thing here. The wood fiber is still holding it all together, but you are breaking down cell walls and you're allowing water to evacuate and dry. So they say submerge it an hour per inch, pile the bowls up and cover with a tarp or old bath towels, allow the water to slowly escape after 3 days, place them in a grocery bag, which kind of serves as a vapor lock to finish drying. Boiling supposedly decreases drying time about 50%. And then, we come to the final way that I still like, it's real tried, true, and tested, is using a bowl kiln. The thing about bowl kilns is they can be made out of anything. I mean, Cindy Drozda's first bowl kiln was a old styrofoam cooler that she just put a light bulb in to dry bowls. So you need an insulated enclosure, a heat source, and some sort of ventilation. Insulation and enclosure, some people have used old refrigerators, but you really have to be careful with that because if you drill into it, be careful not to release Freon into the air because if you release Freon into the air, it is illegal. If you get caught, it's a $10,000 fine. And I had a neighbor where I used to live that was an HVAC contractor, and he told me, not only is it $10,000 fine, so the guy that turns you in gets half the fine, kind of like a finder's fee. So if anybody needs help with this, please let me know. I'll be happy to do what I can for you. We also could use a cooler, or you could build your own. It's very, very easy, which is what I did. I have this workbench in my shop. It's right in front of me right now. And buying this workbench started off with me getting this old door that originally was in my mother-in-law's garage. And her dog had eaten part of the door from the other side because he wanted to get out. He also ate a bunch of sheetrock and fiberglass. Didn't faze him in the least. But I was the real winner because I got this door. And then I figured, well, maybe I'll use it for the top of a workbench since it's a solid core door. So I built this bench out of some 2x4s in old lumber that I had. And I built a recess for my saw in here. Now, at this point, the whole thing was just open under here. And you know, there was a shelf for my saw that goes back here, but there's an open space back here. And then when I started turning, which was years after I built this, I said, yeah, I'd really like to have a bowl kiln. How could I do that? And I was sitting around my shop and going, where can I put it? And I said, well, I bet if I enclosed this area under here, that could become a bowl kiln. So, well, how could I enclose it? Well, if I just took styrofoam insulation, which they sell in 3/4 inch thickness in Home Depot, and if I doubled it up, I now have 1.5 inches. And that would fit great between 2x4s. And if I covered it then with 1/8 inch plywood, I now have insulated walls. And if I then went and I wouldn't even have to insulate the bottom because you really don't lose heat through the bottom. That's 1/2 inch plywood anyway. If I put a couple of holes in the bottom with the gates that I could open and close them, and heated it somehow, I'd have cold air that would come in through the bottom, rise up here, and then I've got this shelf area that's open would come out of here. So bingo, bam, I've got a bowl kiln. So, you know, what I did is I went and built this kiln. The size of my kiln is 25.5 inches by 19.5 inches by 24 inches. Figuring out the total volume comes to 6.9 feet. And what I did as a heat source is originally I just used 2 incandescent light bulbs, thinking that, well, I can vary the heat by the wattage of the bulbs. And what I had done last summer is I converted our whole house to LED bulbs. So I had literally, I spent $200 on LED bulbs for all the lamps and everything in the house. So now I had all these leftover incandescent bulbs. So I've got incandescent bulbs now for my kiln for at least the next few years or so. So 2 or 3 bulbs can give you a great variety of temperature. One of the things you need to consider in this is the flash point of wood, which is 400 degrees Fahrenheit or thereabouts, because this would create one hell of a fire because it's ventilated, even as a fan inside, if this thing ever went up. What I use is I use a wireless indoor-outdoor thermometer to measure the humidity as well as the temperature. And my kiln with 1 bulb starts off at about 85 degrees. And with 3 bulbs of higher wattage, I can get it up to about 145 degrees. There you see 2 bulbs in it. I do have a 3rd bulb socket that I put in since. The other thing that you see over here is that this is a little fan that I bought. The fan really is a great thing. It does a couple of things. First off, if you point it at the bulbs, it helps to cool the bulbs so your bulbs last longer. The bulbs also act as diffusers to make the air go all over the place. So it does and I got that from someplace on the internet. If you're buying a fan, make sure you're buying the fan that is 115 volts that you can plug into a wall socket, because they sell these exact fans, same thing, but they are for computers. They look identical, but they run on much less voltage than that. You can see up here is the indoor-outdoor thermometer sensor right there. Now, in terms of ventilation, also just going back here, you can see the openings in the bottom with the gates that I made. So air's coming in here, it's blowing around, and then it's exiting through a couple of holes that are up here. So air's constantly coming through it, being heated. So it's not like I'm just increasing the humidity inside of the box by the evaporation. It's being recycled back into my shop. A couple of holes on the bottom let air in, a couple holes on the top let moisture out. As hot air rises, it pulls air through it, and it talks about the small fan to evenly distribute heat. In my opinion, the fan increases the efficiency of the kiln by about 50% or so. And there you see a close-up of the fan blowing on the bulbs. Monitoring the temperature, this is the shot of the indoor-outdoor thermometer that you can see at 2 bulbs at that point, and I think they're 100 watts each, and I've got 125 degrees at 1% humidity, and the surrounding air in my shop is then at 66 degrees with 46% humidity. So anything that's in there is going to dry a whole heck of a lot faster than it was just laying on the floor. Now, I want to share with you a case study on an oak bowl that I dried in the kiln. And I'll share with you the data, and you'll see how it dried first on the floor, and then it was thrown in the kiln. So I've got some red oak that was cut in November 2017, cut down by a utility company because they thought the tree was rotten. It was actually perfectly good. And the log was about 17 inches in diameter and 18 inches long. And I went and wound up cutting this into blanks in November 17, and it sat in my shop, my wood storage place outside of my house for probably about 3 months or so before I decided to do something with it. Here's my wood storage area. It's in a Rubbermaid garbage can storage thing that one of my neighbors that was moving gave me. And it's a great place to store wood. So anyway, I rough turned the blank in April of 2018. I noticed a small crack in one of the big blanks, so I rough turned it. I cut the blank into a round shape, rough turned between centers, and I left the thickness. If you rough turn something, it should be about 10% of the diameter. I painted the end grain with anchor seal. Now, I know there are some people out there who have said, well, I can use latex paint. No, you can't. This is why latex paint doesn't work. Latex paint has no flexibility whatsoever. Anchor seal is wax, or an approved green wood type sealer that's sold for that purpose is elastic. So given that wood is hygroscopic and it kind of expands and contracts like a sponge, anchor seal is going to expand and contract with it. Latex paint is going to crack. A couple of years ago at the Monmouth County Fair, I was turning a bottle stop, and I just grabbed a little piece of walnut that somebody had brought. The end grain, about 1 inch by 1 inch by maybe 2 inches long, was sealed with latex paint. As I turned it, there were about 1 million cracks under the latex paint because this had moved. The paint had cracked. You couldn't see the cracks, but air was now getting through it. So what I then do is after I paint it with anchor seal, I give the bowl a serial number, I weigh the bowl and I record the weight, and I lay it face down on my basement floor for a couple of weeks. So there you see my typical procedure for taking a blank. That's a big piece of pine. It's not the oak. I have a bunch of cardboard discs that I screw into them, and I, cut a round shape.
Hey, Bill.
There it is.
Yes, Bill, it's Kevin. The question was asked in the chat. Do you get any mold buildup on the wood in your storage?
It depends on the wood. Usually not. It doesn't really concern me all that much. I had a piece of old maple from like 100-year-old maple tree that I cut down and I anchor sealed it, and I did get mold under it. But when I cut it away into a shape, the mold was gone. The mold hadn't permeated deeply into the wood. Other than that, I usually don't. It's not been a problem for me. This piece here is the reason why you probably should also have a paddle switch on the lathe, which I have, because this piece probably weighs a good 30 pounds or thereabouts. And if this thing takes off, it's going to be like a cannonball. There we have finished bowls laying on my floor. So what you do then is you weigh the bowl once a week, record the weight, look for cracks and deformity. And here we see the bowl, and it is cracked. And that's why you want to watch it. Now, from my experience, one of the things I've seen with cracking is if it's going to crack, it usually happens very shortly after it's been rough turned. So this happened within the first 2 weeks of it being laying on the floor. It hadn't even make it to the kiln. And you see the crack here, because what's happening is tangential shrinkage is occurring, and it was pulling at the top, but the bottom was weaker, so that's where it gave. So what I did is I filled the crack with CA glue, and then hit it with the accelerator. Give the CA glue, when you're filling a crack, time to soak down into the bottom of the crack. Don't be real quick with it. Hit it with the accelerator. And only when you see it's now like overflowing and the crack isn't holding anymore, do you hit it with the accelerator. And to me, it's been a very effective way of starting the cracks.
Bill, why don't you seal the bowls with anchor seal once they're rough turned?
What I do, let me go back here, is you see these lines that are on it over here? What I do is I actually draw lines on the bowl, and then I painted this whole area with anchor seal, that whole area with anchor seal, and the same on the inside. There's differing philosophies on what do you paint and how much. Like, for example, Ron Hughes would tell you he paints the entire bowl with anchor seal, but for the open inside middle of the bowl. Cindy Droza only paints the outside end grain. I do inside and outside end grain. You know, and you can see the deformity beginning to happen already, even though this thing hasn't even been in the kiln yet.
Bill, you're using thin CA, aren't you?
Nope, you use medium CA.
Medium. Oh, okay.
The only time I'll use thin is if it's a hairline crack that I couldn't even get like the edge of a little chisel into. But if I can see at all into the crack, that it's open a thread or more, medium will do the trick. You really don't want to use thin because I'm concerned with thin setting up so quickly before it hits the bottom of the crack. Medium, you don't have that. So I use medium, give it time to sink in, spray it, and keep the bowl on the basement floor. Now, look at this bowl. This initially is what happened. So you see on 4/29/18, its weight was 9 pounds, 14 ounces, 14 and a half ounces. It's rough cut onto the floor. In my shop at that point, it's 68 degrees, 56% relative humidity. And in the course of 1 week, going to 5/6/18, I have already lost 13 and a half ounces, more than 3/4 of a pound. And that's just the normal air. But then it begins to slow because you see now I dropped down to 8.35, then to 7.6, then to 7.3. And now my bowl is gaining weight for some stupid reason because here I went from 7.3 to 7.4. Those are the measurements I wrote down. Really, my scale was probably off by 1/10 of an ounce, which can happen. But it's safe to say by 6.3, I've really stopped losing weight while it's on the floor. Then it goes into the kiln, and my weight takes off from 6.4. I lose at 86 degrees, 31% humidity. I lose a pound in a week, and it slows again. Okay. And now I'm down to 5 pounds, 14 ounces. So if you look at it here on this chart, I'm starting off up here. That's on the floor. I then go to 1 bulb, I see another drop. Then I go to 2 bulbs, more of a drop. So what you're going to have to do is keep increasing the heat to decrease the humidity so you get greater drying. So in the end, this bowl lost 4 pounds and a half ounces of water. That's approximately 62 ounces of water, almost a gallon. Or a thing that I would identify with more is it lost just almost 5 beers worth.
So Bill, what do you think your moisture content is when it went down to 5 pounds?
I don't know what it is at that point, but I can tell you this is the math that shows you this bowl started off at 68.1%. When I was down to 5 pounds with a moisture meter, it was reading 0.
So when I build furniture and I buy lumber that came right out of a kiln, probably the lowest that they bring the moisture content down to on lumber, domestic lumber, is about 6%. 6 to 7% is what they consider dry lumber that's been cooked in a kiln. The problem is living in New Jersey, for probably about 6 of the warm months. That wood is going to go back up to 12 to 14% moisture content.
Right.
Just because New Jersey is humid in the summertime. And that's what I have to build to. You know, that's the moisture content that I live with. So dropping your bowls down to a very, very, very low moisture content in a kiln may not be the best thing to do, because as soon as you pull that bowl out, it's going to start picking up moisture and develop cracks.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I'm going to talk about letting the bowl stabilize. One of the things that I've learned is you take a bowl out of the kiln, I'll leave it like rough turned, laying usually on my table saw, which is more a table than a saw for me, for several weeks, maybe even a month or two till I get to finish turning it. And I do wind up with problems with them if I turn them like right out of the kiln.
Right.
A couple times when I first had the kiln, I did that just because I was so anxious and wanted to see the final product, you know? Like
you may have been better off not cooking the wood so much in your kiln.
Yeah, you're probably right. You know, like I said, I'm still learning about it, but I have gotten them down very low. And generally, I don't have problems, but this one you're going to see was a problem. So this one came down to 68.1%. And you can really see the deformity here, you know, with measuring longitudinally and then across the end grain, that you see on the right side, I'm down to like 11 5/8 or so. And on the left side, I'm like at 12 and just over 12 and a half, you know, probably like 12 9/16. So anyway, you can also see the deformity from the side, you know, on both sides of this, and you see how thick it is. But you don't have any cracks in it, but for that one little one in the bottom. So, you know, allow it to sit for 2 weeks, which I didn't do with this bowl, remount it, and then, you know, final turn it. And you can see the difference now between the shavings. We've got oven dry shavings on the left, you know, fine powdery stuff. We've got wet shavings on the right, kind of like almost like fettuccine noodles, you know, really beautiful. And finishing up, well, in this particular case, like I said, I took this out and I did not allow it to sit like it should have sat to stabilize. I was making my last pass with a bowl scraper to smooth out any ridges that were left when, bam, cracked right in half. This was a bad moment, you know, disaster struck. You can see some of the things I said, and then I'm thinking like, well, maybe I could fix it. Now, I want to show you something. This is very interesting. You would think if it cracked, it would line up perfectly, right? But it didn't. You can see the space at the top, the bottom of it, where the rim, where it's laying on the table, had been turned. It was true. So it's like it comes out of the kiln, and there was this hidden tension within this bowl. That's why you have to let it stabilize and kind of get accustomed to its new shape that it developed in the kiln. Because the cells just didn't want to stay where they were as a result of drying. So what I did at this point is said, well, you know, maybe I can glue it. So I figured, well, I'll put a clamp around the bottom, which I did, you know, big hose clamp coupled together. I took my Vicmark VM120 chuck, put glue in it, I'm cranking down when all of a sudden, bam, I almost had it closed, another crack. Okay, and at this point I'm going, well, is it firewood yet? But, you know, it may not be firewood, but we are getting close at this point. So can it be repaired? If so, how would you repair it? Well, I figured gluing this middle was probably, you know, fruitless at this point. So what I did is I said, well, what I'm going to do is cut out the middle and I'm going to glue new wood in. So I cut out the middle, glued new wood in. I figure I'll return it and sand it. And most importantly, don't make one last pass with the scraper. Don't give the clamp one last turn, you know, because I wanted this to work. So anyway, here we go. Now this over here is not the bowl that I had This is just a bowl for demonstration to show you the jig that I made. That I can clamp a bowl in. This rides in a track on my bandsaw, and I can make a relatively straight cut right across. So on the right side, you see the photo where I've cut out the center of that bowl now, and the cracks are all gone. And I then went and took the bowl and I glued pieces of maple on both sides of it. You can see them right here, and a piece of Paduke in the middle that just came exactly to the same dimension as the piece that I cut out. Now to clamp this, what I did is I put this laying on my drill press table. You can see one of the pieces of maple there. I screwed or chucked a finishing nail, put a little divot in the wood, and to keep pressure on it, I just hung my crowbar on the handle here. So it dried fine and strong, and then I used a wood screw over here on both sides, and again with my hose clamps together at the bottom. So I returned it, chucked it in a Longworth chuck, reversed, chucked the tin in very carefully, sanded and finished, and bam, that's the final project. So I was pretty happy with how this came out. I still have it. And amazingly, the two pieces of maple that I used, this is totally unplanned, were actually book matched here and over on the other side also. So that kind of added to it. I would like to think I planned it. I picked the wood for that, but that didn't happen. Now here's the other blank. The other blank, I went out that had no cracks in it. And this one now is really destroyed. It's checked all over the place. You know, you can fill cracks using coffee grounds mixed with epoxy, as they did on the left. Make sure they are used coffee grounds. Use new coffee grounds. They've got oil in them. They're not going to work. This one over here, I used fine gold glitter mixed with epoxy. You'll notice the outline of this is black in all of these. And the reason why is because I first tried ebonizing this bowl. I took like a bunch of steel wool and metal filings, mixed it with white vinegar, let it sit for a couple days, then painted it on. I think it would be beautifully black. No, mine came out looking like it had been boiled in raw sewage. So I went and I turned that off, and I then, you know, just did this. But that's why you see the black there. Do any of you have any questions? Because I'm about at the end of my presentation. Anything at all?
You know, I think I have one suggestion. When you finish cooking your bowls in your kiln, take your moisture meter and see what the moisture meter content is of the bowl you're taking out of the kiln. Because if it's around 10 to 12, 14%, it's probably comparable to what the atmosphere in New Jersey is. And that might be the stable point where you should take it out to prevent cracking.
Yeah, that probably is a good idea, that I should try not making them well done.
Right.
But kind of like medium well. You know, where they still have, you know, a little bit of fight left, you know.
Because I think what you're doing is you're creating so much stress by overcooking the bowls. You're asking for trouble that you may not need to be confronted with.
Yeah, and I certainly got it on this one. I have found out that letting them sit for a while after they come out, stabilize, is good, because this bowl here, as he said, when it initially cracked apart, there was hidden tension within the bowl because the pieces wouldn't fit back together. And that I would. You know.
Hey,
anyway.
Bill.
Yes.
A lot of production turners that use kilns, they actually don't take the bowls out when they're done drying. They just shut the kiln off and let it sit for a week and slowly come down in temperature.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Chris. I should try that. You know, instead of taking it off, because it would kind of reacclimate itself slowly to the surrounding atmosphere. You know. Anyway, so, you know, that brings us to the end of it. And thank you very much. And I hope you all build kilns now.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks very much. It was really good. Can you stop your share?
Thanks, Bill.
There you go.
Thank you.
Really nice.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks.
Hey, Bill, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Isn't denatured alcohol pretty flammable?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's flammable stuff. It's in California they have to label it as fuel. You're not even allowed to call it denatured alcohol. And the thing about it too, what's real dangerous, it burns with like almost a clear flame. You can't even see the flame sometimes from it. Until you get close to it, you notice the hair on your hand just went up. So I mean, that's the other thing is this guy from the North Jersey Cup said I have 5 gallons of it. I'd be really, I mean, his shop was in a detached garage, I think, but I'd be really concerned with having 5 gallons of denatured alcohol inside my house in a basement.
Yeah, that's the point that I'm really bringing up here. I actually use denatured alcohol in a burner on my boat.
Okay.
You know, so I'm not sure I'd want 5 gallons of that in my house. I don't even put that fuel inside my boat.
Right.
I put it in one of the external storage areas.
Yeah.
That's like putting a 5-gallon can of gasoline in your basement. Not a good idea.
I can remember using denatured alcohol for a little burner that I could melt glass with.
Yeah, we used to, you know, we use them in for alcohol burners and chemistry class and stuff like that when I was in high school. And I remember it was like, you know, it burned hot and not even really see the flame coming off of it. And it does have vapors, so it ignites very, very easily.
Yeah.
Isn't that the base for?
What'd you say, George?
Isn't that the base for Sterno?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, could be though.
A gel and, you know, alcohol.
Yeah, my wife is a science teacher, and they use the little. It's not high school; it's grammar school. So they use the little, like not really Bunsen burners. They're more like a little candlelight, and they use denatured alcohol as the fuel in those. But the downside is it's pretty clear. You know, it's hard to see the flame.
The other question I have, and I think I asked this question when that other, what is it, Pentacrol?
Pentacrol, yeah.
What is that doing to the? I mean, is that gonna? Can I still use that for food safe bowl?
I don't know.
Yeah.
There was nothing on. Let me just see. In fact, right behind me. I've got a gallon of it right here. And there is no skull and crossbones on the back of this, Bruce. There's no warning this is going to kill you type stuff. Doesn't tell you about it being food safe. Maybe I'll Google that and see what happens.
You should request an MSDS. Request an MSDS from the company. You can just email them. They have to send you the MSDS on any chemical product.
And that will tell me if it'll kill me.
That will have all the specs on the flammability, the health hazards, and anything else you want to know about that product.
Okay, like that's what I'll do. I'll ask them that. But you can see I still have like this much left of it. So it probably is using about as much as they say in it. And I'm probably going to buy myself another gallon. So I have like more greater volume to cover stuff. But so far, I think it's pretty good stuff. It's a little on the pricey side. A gallon of this is, I think, $67.50 or thereabouts. But you do get a number of pieces out of it. You know, and I only save it for that type of stuff that I know is probably going to crack.
What else is it used for besides preventing cracks?
It also goes good with soda and ice cubes and a little.
Hey, Jerry, where are you?
Where am I?
Yeah.
I love the backdrop there, Jerry.
You like the backdrop?
Oh, come on.
It's pretty good.
I've got one with the Golden Gate Bridge too.
What's that?
I've got one with the Golden Gate Bridge.
Okay, that was really good, Bill. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yep, thank you.
So, absolutely good.
Ronnie, looks like you got your belongings back.
So I'm going to take and mute everybody, unfortunately, right now. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So that brings us to the point where we're going to do the challenge. As long as no one else has any other questions for Bill, and if you do, unmute yourself and ask your question. Otherwise, I'll go to the monthly challenge.
Kevin, before you do, where are we on the auction? I haven't seen anything in a while, and
the last I have is that Susan is winning so far at a bid for $40.
I do have a question, Kevin, for Bill. Just wondering, will he be putting the slides on the website under the forum or the blog?
Bill? Nope.
Bill, you're muted.
Unmute Bill.
Sorry, Bill. Hold on. Let me unmute you from my side. Actually, I can't. Unmute.
There we go. I'm happy to put them on the website or the blog. My problem is getting them to somebody because I can't email them because of the file size. It's huge.
Oh, okay.
Photos in them.
How big is the presentation, Bill? Over 25 megs?
Yeah, I think we're up at about 65 or 70. I could put it on a CD and mail it to you.
Bill, do you have a Google account? You can use your Google Drive and just upload it to.
I don't have a Google account.
Yeah, it's actually going to be tough to do that too. We'll think of something, Susan, because I think that's a really good idea. But I can tell you one thing that will in fact be up there. Hang on, let me bring myself. Sorry. One of the things that you can do, one of the things that I do through all of these meetings is that I actually record the meeting in Zoom. So the whole entire meeting is in fact recorded. And then it gives me about, typically it takes me a couple days once I convert it all, and then I upload it to the ASWT website on YouTube. So what I do too is when that's up there, I put a link in the video section of the website, and you can actually go to the website for videos. The meeting minutes are there, and the actual recordings of the meetings are there in on our website. If you click the link, it automatically goes to our YouTube site and it plays. Ronnie so well did that when we originally started this, doing it through the streaming, and we've been able to continue it where we're actually recording the Zoom meetings. So if for some reason you fall asleep or something in the middle of a meeting and you want to see what you missed, you can in fact go up after about a week. I'll post it up and I'll send an email that it's posted, and you can see the entire meeting. You can fast forward through the parts to the parts that you want as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you that aren't using a website, that's another hint where you want to be using that. And we're going to be starting to be able to accept credit cards on that for membership dues as well. Anthony, I think you just outbid poor Susan by $1. That wasn't very nice. But okay, so I'm going to
before we move on, I just wanted to mention one other technique that you might want to consider when drying bowls. I've had reasonably good success using a food dehydrator and taking a rough turned bowl and putting it in a dehydrator at, I think I used like 140 degrees overnight, and it got it down from I don't know, 15 to 18% moisture to a point where I couldn't measure it with my moisture meter. A food dehydrator works basically as a kiln. and it is forced hot air, and it has a fan. And again, as the name implies, it's used to dehydrate fruits, vegetables, make jerky, and things of that sort. I think I posted, I'm not sure, I think I posted the results of some experiments I did on our website. So I'd suggest you guys take a look before you try to start building a kiln. If your needs are small, this might work well. They're only about $100. Anyhow, I just wanted to add my 2 cents.
Super, thanks. I appreciate
If
that.
if I can interject here a second, Bruce's question about the safety of the product. I pulled up an MSDS for the Pentacryl. There's nothing about what happens when it dries or when it's fully dried, but it says ingestion may cause gastrointestinal irritation, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea.
Oops.
But there's nothing about in their MSDS about, you know, food safe or anything when it's fully dried, fully cured.
So I guess it's not a good mixer with gin, but it might be good once it's, you know, dried out, huh? Cool beans. Thanks, Doug. Okay, so that brings us to the challenge. Any other questions before I move on? Okie dokie. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully it'll work this time. We're going to take and share the screen. Let's see if it works. Does everybody see the auction pieces? If you don't, let me know.
I would see them.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I see it.
So I'm going to move forward and do into the monthly challenge. As everyone knows, it was a Christmas ornament. When I started the club, it was called Bev's Challenge. Thank you, Bev, for getting this going. Tom for picking it again. We're going to go into it, and consequently, I made Bev. Hold on 1 second. I mute everybody out. Hang on, guys. I have to mute somehow or another. There it is. I'm going to mute everybody down so that way everybody. So I'm muted myself. But hey, what the hell? Okay, anyway, so Bev, you're up first, and here's your first one. Let me narrow this down. There you go. Unmute yourself.
I just did. Yep. That's a limba bell. It's about this big. I don't know. You can't see me, but it's tiny. It's made of limba, which is, I don't know. I don't know what limba is, but it was easy to turn, and it's kind of like oak, I guess. It's a hardwood, and it came out pretty well. I don't know whether you can see the one in my hand, but I put a bell, an actual bell in the bottom of it. If you go to the next slide, yeah, you can see the bottom of the bell in there. So that's going to be my Christmas ornament, but please don't tell anybody. It's a secret. Okay?
It's adorable.
Thank you. It's little, it's teeny. And I just did another one in canary wood, which smells beautiful and has a gorgeous grain to it. I don't know whether you can all see that or not, but it's a gorgeous grain and it's easy to turn.
Pretty.
Very nice. Okay, done.
Thanks, Bev.
Questions? Okay.
Nope. Okay, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Bill Stewart, let me put you up here and I'm going to unspotlight Bev. And I'm going to see if I can find Bill. Trying something new tonight. If I can keep this going this way, it'll be pretty cool so that we can all see whoever is speaking at the same time while they show their piece. And there you go.
Okay, this piece is probably about 7 inches or so from top to bottom. First off, the center is made out of holly, and I took the holly and I bleached it so it was starting near white. I then coated it with Mylan's sanding sealer, which is lacquer based. Then to color it, I took my airbrush and used apprenticed alcohol-based dyes in it. I used red, light blue, dark blue, and also there's a little bit of yellow in there, and colored it. Now, the top part and the finial that are made out of maple, and that was then coated with silver gilder's wax, polished, and then the whole thing was lacquered. I mean, the center part of it, the colored part, is also completely hollowed out, so it doesn't weigh a whole lot. So anyway, that's my ornament.
Really pretty. Any questions for Bill? If you
How
do,
long did it take, Bill?
Was, I don't know, several hours. You know, I did it in 2 stages. I did the body of it one day and sanded it and bleached it. Then I came back the other day and I think I did the finial on the top and glued it together. But at first I had colored it, you know, and I put the finial on top and bottom on last.
When you colored it, did you allow the colors to dry before you did the next color?
Yeah, they dry pretty much fast, Jody, because they're alcohol based. They have a little bit of shellac in them as a binder, but like, you know, in 10 minutes or so, the thing's dry.
Oh, okay. So not too much color mixing happening.
Right. The color mixing that you're seeing happening here is overspray of one over the other, because I used like a little water airbrush that I have, and it seems to spray the apprentice dyes really well, you know, to decorate stuff. I'm going to do more of that with probably doing some bowls that are going to be colored on the outside, kind of along that line, but I'm trying different color schemes.
and in case anybody is interested in Bill, you may have seen some of it too. Nick Agar is actually a gentleman who does a lot of airbrush spray of dyes, and he has some pretty good videos up there. He's working with one of the, I forget the company that he's working with. It's not hitting my head right now. But that gets that same kind of cool. And he also uses that same silver glaze to be able to put on things. It's pretty cool. Nice piece.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Bill?
Bill, is the bulb itself hollow or is it solid?
It's hollow. It's hollow.
Oh, nice.
Cool beans. Okie dokie. Pete, next one up. Ready? Let me see if I can find you. Say something, Pete. Unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Yep.
The reason why I got 40s together, you can see the size. Go back to the first one.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button.
They're, you can just see the size. The big ones are about 7 inches tall. They're all hollowed. They're a walnut.
Ah, sorry.
Okay, you go on the next slide.
No, I was gonna move this. I'm gonna move you out because yours takes the whole frame here. I'm gonna apologize and take you out of the picture. Anything else? Next slide.
Yeah, next slide.
Sorry.
Okay, this is the first time I used dyes on it. The red one is completely finished. The other two are not finished. It's maple, and when I found out I use these are water-based dyes, and you really have to sand down the maple. So what I did, I sanded the maple to get an even stain. I coated the maple with shellac, sanded it down, and then I stained it on the red one. If you see the blue one and the green one, the stain didn't come out that even because I didn't use the shellac. So if you're going to use a stain, you really have to, you know, get the grain even. The stain, the lay flat.
They're pretty though.
See, when I put stain directly on raw wood, any type of tear out you may have ever so slightly, even if it's invisible, it instantly will show up once you put color stain on it because the wood just sucks it up right there.
Well, that's why I was showing the blue one and the red one. The red one, I did use a shellac first before I put the stain down. The blue and the green, I didn't, and you don't see the same shine. You can see the difference in the finish.
Yeah, right. You can. Yeah.
That's why I put the 3 of them down. Okay, the next slide.
There you go.
Okay, these are also done in maple and walnut, and these are hollowed and pierced.
Wow.
Nice work.
Really beautiful.
Nice job, Pete.
Did you use hard maple or soft maple?
That's hard maple.
Really nice. Pete.
Super
Very
nice.
nice.
It's really cool. Okay. Oops, sorry. My fault. Really nice. Any other questions or comments for Pete? Okay, Larry, you're up.
Okay. 3 ornaments. Actually, we do. Can you put the video on? The video run?
Everything in here is a still. I don't.
I sent a video. All right, doesn't matter. I can work off of the still.
All right.
This one on the left is a sea urchin shell. It's been coated inside with CA glue to hold it all together. I find that works very well. The finial and the top piece are maple. That's about 8 inches tall. The globe in the one in the center is a little birdhouse ornament. The top is spalted maple, and the body is a walnut. The one on the right, the globe, is walnut. That's hollowed out, and the finial and the top are cherry. That also is about 8 inches tall. The one in the back, I don't know. Can we have another picture? Maybe I can see the one in the back. There we go. That one is about 12 inches, and that's a cedar. The globe is cedar, been hollowed out, and the finial and the top are cocobolo. And that's the 4 of them.
Let me see what else I have.
Oh, there's just repeats of the same thing, I think, showing different angles.
Gotcha.
Very nice, Larry.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, it's actually on the turntable. It was. I sent a video of the things turning around so you could see it one after the other, but it didn't take.
Yeah, it came through as a still. Sorry.
Yeah, if you look on my Facebook page, you could see it turning around if you want to.
Cool.
Probably a little clearer too.
Thank you. Sorry. Excuse me.
Okay.
Okay. Jody, ready?
Hi. Okay. So I haven't turned in a minute. So the fact that I got on a lathe at all this challenge was exciting. This little snowman, he's only about 2.5, 3 inches tall. He came out of mystery wood from Bjorn's shop when he was getting rid of stuff. He had a box of lately, these little cast-offs. Now he has some issues because I turned him and I ran out of room and I was way too close to the chuck. So I attempted to flip him around and stick his butt in the chuck and hold the hat in with the tailstock, which sort of worked, except he had a little bit of issue with spinning because his butt was too small. So he has like a little belt mark you can see at the bottom from where the chuck was. And then if you go to the next picture, Kevin, the top, because it was spinning, I was not able to get a really clean cut across the top of his hat. So, you know, there's some tool marks that I couldn't get rid of. But I got on a lathe and I didn't suck, so that was exciting. This was actually my second ornament. Oh, you can see the belt mark in this picture. So that's just from him spinning in the chuck. Wow.
He's
That's
cute,
all right.
though.
Thank you.
I mean, the belt mark is really, you should be calling it a design feature.
Absolutely.
That's the design feature, exactly.
He has a belt. You planned it that way.
George totally pointed out that it was a belt and that it was on purpose. And like, yeah, I'll go for that. That works.
I like it. Okay.
Yeah. So the next, I don't know what's now. Oh, this is the top where it didn't really, I didn't really get a good cut, and it was just, I was lucky to salvage it. That was kind of where I was at that point of the day. So I'm gonna stick a, I have to get some small jewelry size eyelets. I'm gonna shove an eyelet in there, and nobody will ever see it. It'll be on the tree. It'll be fine.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I'm trying
That's
to.
all right. There you go. So this was my first attempt at my ornament. Earlier this year, my neighbor had a maple tree go down and I stole a bunch of stuff. So this is a piece of maple from my neighbor from probably April. So it didn't dry very well and there is a lot of cracking at the top. And I kind of like kept making it shorter, trying to cut underneath the cracks, like to get it, you know, get rid of the cracked part, and my tree kept getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And I finally just made it the shape it was going to be and called it a day. But I probably can't drill through the top because it's all cracked up. If you go to the next slide, I think you can see the cracks. Yeah, so you can see the cracks and the top is all jacked. It was a lost cause. So I experimented with some color, tried to layer some colors with just like Crayola markers, then sanded it out because I didn't really like it. And then it kind of turned out to be a cool, you know, brushed on look. And that's just a Crayola marker that was in the drawer of the workbench. But I will say, Kevin, if you would switch to the next slide for me, this is the very first time ever that I have turned the bottom and not had a big whacked out problem. I actually got the bottom parted off properly and it sits flush on the table. I didn't finish it or sand it, but I was very proud of the fact that I actually parted it off properly for the first time ever. So that was like a big win.
Is this what you used to make from the burl?
Yeah, I made Christmas trees and then painted it. Sure. I have a little more respect for a burl than that. So this is my current project that I'm working on. He's not quite finished. I have to part it off, but I just ran out of time. This is also a piece of mystery wood. It might be spalted maple from Pete's house, but I'm not really positive. The spalting actually, it's probably not spalted maple from Pete's house because that you could see the spalting before. The spalting actually surprised me. It wasn't there when I started cutting. And he's going to be a little gnome. He's going to get a little beard and a nose, but he hasn't been finished. He's not cut off the lathe yet. But that's it. Those are my 3 attempts at ornaments. I was just excited that I got on a lathe this month.
Very cute.
So,
well done, Jody.
Thank you.
Nice. Okay, Chris, I have 2 from you. Ready? Unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm here. So this was made out of a piece of spalted maple. The finial and the top part are black walnut. I stuck a little bird in the middle of it. You go to the next one, it's a full-size picture of it.
That is so cute. I love that little bird in there. He's adorable.
It's probably about 10 inches tall.
What kind of bird is it?
One of the foam birds that you get at Hobby Lobby.
Foam bird.
It's a blue jay.
Yeah, I
I
love
didn't know blue jays came that color.
finial's outstanding.
I can't seem to get everybody's pictures back. I apologize, but that's really cute, Chris. Any other comments? I'll keep going.
Nice finial.
Thank you.
Cool beans. Okay, oops. And that brings us to the December challenge. Tom, this is going to be you.
Before we get into that, well, I guess we got into it. As some of you know, this will be my last challenge. Doug has agreed to take over the deciding of what our challenges should be. So what I wanted to do is go out in a blaze of fury here, if you want to call it that. During the almost 2 years that I've done this, we've done things that were like spheres or circles, balls, we've done spindle turning, we've done a little bit of hollowing. So what I thought was we would make a kendama, which is a kid's tool. We can go back to the picture, Kevin.
Alrighty, hold on. You're just making my life difficult, aren't you? Trying to do that here. Hold on. 1 second.
What I was looking for was something that I remember as a kid as a ball and a cup toy, and I couldn't find anything either on YouTube or in the books that I have, but I did find this kendama. And if you, as you can see, basically it's a ball and it's got a string attached to the spindle, and the way you use it is to swing it up and catch the ball in one of the 3 cups. So again, it combines a sphere turning, some spindle turning, and some small but yet realistic hollow turning. So I thought this would be kind of a neat thing to go out to the end of the year with. I will send my normal sheets out describing various videos where I found these pictures, and it will include the pictures as well. So that's the December challenge. But before I give up the podium here, I had sent out after the normal announcement of the ornaments as a challenge, a separate email from a that contained videos from a guy named Steve Ogle, who did some ornaments. In my email, I suggested that you look at the videos and pick out things that I thought were unsafe. And I was wondering if anybody has done that. Don't all yell at once. Okay, I'm going to assume that nobody did, all right? But if you still have the emails, I would suggest you go back and take a look at them, because I found in the 2 videos that Steve did, and Steve is a very accomplished turner, but in the videos that he did, I found 8 instances that I thought were unsafe. Some of them major, some of them minor. And I'm just going to review them just because I have them. The first, and a lot of you might disagree with this, was he wore a wristwatch. A lot of people say you shouldn't wear a watch or any kind of jewelry when you're turning. That one's up for grabs. On more than one occasion, he moved the tool rest without turning off the lathe. Definitely not something that you want to develop as a habit. He wore a loose long sleeve shirt. Again, not one of the best things to be doing when you're turning. During the course of the videos, he did some drilling with Forstner bits, and he repeatedly pulled out the drill without holding the Jacobs chuck. And if any of you have done that and had the Jacobs chuck fly out, you'll know that that's certainly not something to develop as a habit. Fifth, he uses, and this one may be up for grabs, he uses calipers to measure his diameters while the work is turning. And I think that's a dangerous technique. Very easily you can catch your caliper on the turning, and it can come back and do damage. He did a lot of sanding, and he didn't use a dust mask, which I'm not quite so sure why. On more than one occasion, he reaches across his lathe while the lathe is turning and grabs another tool from his shelf. again, not a very good technique. And finally, when he was doing some finials, he didn't use a face mask, which I think was a little bit dangerous. So anyhow, I think it's kind of interesting as we look at these videos to be critical of some of the things that people are doing. And these are professional, not necessarily professional, but heavy duty YouTubers using really questionable techniques. So with that, I say it's been fun doing the challenge. Doug, good luck with it. Have fun. And thanks to everybody who participated over the last couple of years. I'm done.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks,
Thank
Tom.
you, Tom. You did a great job.
Thanks, Tom.
Nice job.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's been really good. And as I've said numerous times, I mean, I think the challenges over this last year and all the challenges that we've had, and Bev, I'll go back to when you were doing the Christmas challenge. I mean, it was the first one that I really saw that the club got into it. I think the one thing that all you need to realize, this is a very difficult thing to do, to be able to put together ideas that everybody can participate in. Tom's been super careful to make sure that he keeps the cost down and you don't have to go out and buy something. Doug has already come up with 2 really good ideas that we're going to be doing soon as well. We're drawing back on some other things that will provide some more challenges. For this last one for Tom, I think it would be a good way to go out because it's a challenging piece. But being able to put any of these things together, Bill Stewart, I thank you so much for doing the slide presentation. I'm sure you had a lot of hours putting that together, and I know how many hours Doug took to clean because I got to see it this morning and I got to see it now. And I can tell you for absolute certain, he's been painting his house and he didn't do any painting today. So because of how far he got with the cleaning of the shop. But I thank you all. And the one thing that I'm always thrilled with, and one thing I've said to my friends and my wife especially, is that the spirit and the ability for everybody to pitch in and really do something is what makes the social side of this club to make it really enjoyable while you're being educated, which is something that is not something you see a lot. 99% of the classes that I've had to attend, both professionally and for things that I enjoy, you're either enjoying yourself or you're learning. And one thing I'm really pleased with our club activities, you're learning, and usually it's pretty enjoyable too. So thank you, everyone. So with that, unless anybody has any other questions or thoughts or things for going forward here, that pretty much concludes everything I had.
It's Jesse, you missed me somehow on my ornament. So.
Jesse, I'm sorry.
All right, the end of the world.
Do the right address. Hold on. Let me switch you over. Do you have the ornament with you?
Yeah, I do.
All right, so here we go. And I apologize.
That's all right. So I made a little, my brother-in-law has a Star Wars tree he does every year, so I made a little TIE Fighter resin and burl, like a globe, I guess you could say.
That's cool.
That's super cool, Jesse.
Neat. I like it.
Yeah, there's a lot of YouTube videos about people doing them, so I figured I'd try it.
You made the TIE Fighter also?
That's eBay Micro Machines for like $2. So.
That was really cool, Jesse. You know what? I
had to make cup center so I could do the sphere, but it's a little bit more oval than it should be. I need more practice, but it was a fun challenge to say the least.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's cool.
I think that holding it up.
What did you use to make the casting in? What kind of mold?
I just had dollar store Tupperware,
Cool.
It's really slick. And again, I apologize. I did get the pictures. I don't know where they went in the slide presentation. Somewhere's in the mix that got missed. But I got to tell you, seeing it live, you could see that it's transparent. The photograph, I couldn't tell that it was actually transparent. That's really.
Yeah, I tried. I was supposed to be tinted purple, but it came out more cloudy gray. So I don't know. Like I said, I need more practice.
Yeah,
I have I didn't do this one yet, but this, I don't know if you guys can see it. There's an Imperial starship in this one. So, like, I don't know. Like, you can sort, there it is. So, but we'll see. It's fun, something different to do. So,
Cool beans.
Anyway, thanks.
Yeah, sorry again. One thing that I will say, if everybody, I have 4 different email addresses for the club and different things. I usually try and put the email address for where to send the pictures, because that way it actually pings me so that I can put them in. I had some emails coming in different places, but I'd appreciate if everybody could just send them to the email that I put in the thing. It just makes it easier all the way around. But questions otherwise? Anybody else? If not, I thank you all for attending. I wish you all.
Auction, Kevin.
I'm sorry?
I got some.
Auction.
Oh, damn. I almost blew it. Okay, so, you can tell where my brain's at. Anthony, I was, I don't know if Susan's going to hit you or not, but, $1 over. Am I hearing you're willing to go to 45 on that just to make it fair to Susan, or do you want to stay at 41 and just kind of rub it in a little?
He's going to go to 45.
There you go. I'll have to keep that in mind for the next time to make it $5 increments.
And she's going to steal it from him anyway.
Yeah, so good deal. So Anthony, you have won the items for $45. Thank you very much. It'll be donated to the club in its entirety. Once Doug gets a check, you can send the check to Doug, and then when Doug has the check, we'll actually be able to take and figure out whether we meet someplace and I can hand it off to you, or I can drop ship it to you, whichever you prefer, because I actually have this one instead of Norm, and we'll be able to do it that way.
Kevin,
Go
I
ahead.
think you mail it to Susan.
I like that way of thinking. Yes, indeed. So,
She is in a different state right now.
yeah, sure. Yeah. So, but yeah, we'll get that out and just get a check over to Doug. Thank you again for the contribution. And I'd like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Please be safe. Hope everybody has a great time with their family. We will be doing the December meeting. Will be a roundtable like discussion on photographing your pieces. Chris, Jody, Doug, and 1 or 2 other people have in fact volunteered on that challenge. We'll be doing literally how you can actually photograph, some potential setups for being able to photograph your work, what you're trying to do. That will be our December meeting, normal place, and we'll go from there. And if anything should happen with the parking lot get together, Norm or Bill will be sending you an update for that so that we can get that together as long as weather holds. We should be in good shape. Otherwise, I wish everybody again a good Thanksgiving. And
Kevin?
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Good
Thanksgiving,
meeting.
everyone.
Take care. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank
Be
you.
safe.
Thanks
Kevin,
again
can
to
I
Bill
ask you a
and to
question?
Doug.
Yeah, sure. Somebody's asking.
Yes, and I don't mean to keep everybody, if whoever can answer it. I was just wondering, the parts that go into the headstock and then the tailstock, are they interchangeable or are they just for the headstock or tailstock?
They are all Morse tapers. Typically, a Morse taper on your lathe will be standard for the headstock or the tailstock. So you'll have a number 1 or a number 2 Morse taper for both the head and the tailstock. They're both friction fits. Typically what happens, and some beginners, they do it differently. You can have a safety headstock piece, which is actually you're turning the piece with it, and it's a safety piece, so it's a friction connection. It doesn't have spikes like you would have like on a one that has like 2 or 3 prongs. You can switch them from headstock to tailstock. There's not going to be any issue. The problem will be more, how do you drive the piece? Because typically what's in the headstock is driving the piece. And if you have something that doesn't have a good friction fit or a good pressure connection, it won't actually turn the piece. But I don't think about, unless anybody else has a comment, They're all the Morse tapers. They all operate the same. I don't think there's really any difference between a headpiece or a tailpiece. It's just a matter of what the use of it is. Anybody else have a thought on that? No.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, but I typically use, for when I'm teaching somebody that's new, I use a safety on the headstock, which is just friction fit. And I do, in fact, use that same safety drive when I'm turning pens. Oh, Doug's got one. Let me highlight Doug's up here. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to bring Doug into this. There you go. Doug, hold that up again. There you go. So in that one, you see the circle around it is really the friction component that would turn the piece. The point is just a centering item. And you could put that on either side, tailstock or headstock. And if you turn pens,
Yeah, I see those cabinets.
yeah, if you turn pens, a lot of people do use the same thing to be the either end of the mandrel.
Okay. All right.
Good
Thank
question.
you all.
Yeah, great question. Anybody else? Cool beans. So then thank you everyone again. I'm going to shut the meeting down and stop the recording. It'll be up on the website shortly. Have a great holiday. Be safe. Everybody
See
stay
everybody.
healthy.
You too. Bye.
You too.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye, everyone.
Take
Bye,
care,
everybody.
everybody.